どうもエルズと申します。 F1 公式ポッドキャストにてチーム代表が交代となったレッドブルやツナー選手の今後について語られていました。司会のクラークソン、 F1 特派員のバレット、元 F1 ドライバーのパーマーの3人のトークを日本語訳と合わせてご紹介いたします。それではどうぞ。
Let's start though with Red Bull Racing. Christian Horner is no longer their team principal and CEO, replaced by Racing Bull's Laurent Mekies. I recorded an emergency F1 Nation with F1 TV's lead commentator Alex Jakes, reacting to that last week. But let's now get your take on the situation at Red Bull and what their future looks like. Lawrence, what was your reaction when you heard that Horner was out?
It was one of shock, TC. I think that over the course of the British Grand Prix weekend, as difficult as that one was for Red Bull, there wasn't really an inkling that this was coming. So when the news dropped, it seemed like Red Bull had a plan. You know, he left with immediate effect. Laurent Mekies came in to replace him. Alain Permain stepped up to replace Laurent as team principal at Racing Bulls. So it felt like, from that perspective, Red Bull had a plan, and it was all happening very quickly. In terms of why it's happened right now, well, Red Bull have obviously had a really difficult season up until this point. Max has a couple of wins this year, but they've actually only had 4 wins in the last 26 Grand Prix. They were 4th in the championship. They've scored 200 points less than they did at this time last year, and they are essentially out of contention of both championships. So if you look at pure performance, you can understand potentially why Red Bull would want to make a change.
Yeah, well, I mean, surprised at the timing. I think, there's been a lot of fallout at Red Bull the last 18 months. So there's been many high-profile names leaving the team, including Adrian Newey and Jonathan Wheatley. And I think there was a sense that with things falling away this year, Christian was under pressure. But I completely agree that the timing and the suddenness of this post-Silverstone, I think it's caught everyone off guard. And I feel like it leaves Red Bull in a real tight spot as well, in terms of obviously Laurent stepping up. But it's a big job for him because Red Bull is such a different beast to the B team.
And the team is very much a reflection of Christian Horner. He hasn't missed a single race of Red Bull's 405 starts to date. Do you think Mekies will just pick up the baton and carry on where Horner left off, or do you think his job description is slightly different now?
I think his job description has to be different because Christian was such a huge part of the Red Bull operation. It began with Christian 20 years ago, and the influence that he's had across the business, they're obviously making their powertrain next year. I think to then come in as someone else and try and step into those shoes and try and repeat all of that is going to be a big job. But I think that's probably not what Red Bull management will want from Laurent. I think they'll want him to come in and run the team in the way that he wants to run the team. He's had quite an incredible rise. From 2 years ago, he was with Ferrari, and then gone to his first team principal job at Racing Bulls, the sister team. And now he's team principal CEO of one of the biggest teams in the sport. So look, they must believe that he is capable of doing it. What I know from my dealings with Laurent is that he's very well liked within the Red Bull family, so that's the wider energy drinks firm. He's very well liked within the sister team, which he actually began his career when it was Toro Rosso and had all of those times there. And he is very well respected amongst his contemporaries within the paddock. So I think they will hope that he will come in and he'll steady that ship. That I think that he will quickly galvanise a team that will be in a bit of confusion, I guess, with this change, having got used to Christian coming in every day as the boss. I think they'll trust Laurent to be able to steady that ship and run things. And effectively, he's got half a year just to get through to the end of the year before this regulation change. So at least he's got some time to try and get his feet under the table at a time when there won't be that much expectation on the team, given where they are at the minute.
But there are really big things he needs to address immediately. And the driver lineup is obviously one of them. And Max Verstappen's contract and all the rumours falls in the same time as Christian is ousted from the team. So I think that's one thing that Laurent, with the hierarchy at Red Bull, need to try and knuckle down. Can they keep their star driver? Because Max at the moment seems to be the glue that's just holding this whole team together right now. If you take out Max from Red Bull, they've lost all the old management. Helmut Marko's still there in an advisory capacity. But A lot of the race team have gone from senior positions. Yet Max is still able to deliver pole position at Silverstone. He's still able to direct the team. GP is obviously now going to be a central figure as well, who's got a great relationship with Max. But, you know, the other drivers are a big question mark as well. And that's where Laurent has got some great experience working with Yuki Tsunoda before and others to try and sort out what's going on there. But the whole dynamic of the drivers is probably his first thing to try and get on top of.
And turn this into a two-car team. I mean, without Max Verstappen, Red Bull would be last in the Constructors' Championship this year. That is how significant his influence is. And yes, he's worked with Yuki Tsunoda before, but it's kind of more than just getting the best out of Yuki, isn't it? We've seen over the last 7 years or so, ever since Daniel Ricciardo left the team, that second car hasn't performed anything like as effectively as the first car. And I think that has to be Mekies', if not job number one, but very near the top of the list, is to get it operating as a two-car team, to get this team properly challenging for the Constructors' Championship. Because you can't, when you look at the effectiveness of McLaren, you can't compete with them if you've only got one car.
No, and to be fair, I do think that there was chatter over the course of the British Grand Prix weekend about the necessity to do that internally, to not have a car that is designed so heavily towards Max. So we'll have to wait and see for 2026 and beyond whether or not that is going to be the case. But I think trying to dial that out this year, given the way that teams will be turning their taps off on car development this year, is going to potentially be a step too far. I think to Jolyon's point about Laurent's experience with drivers, I think that will probably help Max as well as Yuki. I think Max has been across everything, I feel, all of the big decisions that have happened. He will have been made aware of all of them. I'm sure he would have been made aware of the Christian news as well. I understand he had a meeting with Mintzlaff over the course of the British Grand Prix weekend as well. So I think that he will be across it. Whether or not he feels like the change and the new strategy of Austrian management going forward is enough, maybe that will be enough and that Laurent will just then have to manage that. I think Laurent can make a big step with Yuki, put his arm around him in the way that he did when he was at Racing Bulls. And I think Yuki was at his best when he was managed by Laurent and when he was managed by Franz Tost before. So I think from an immediacy perspective, I think that will help Yuki try and get to terms with a car that is going to continue to be difficult to drive. He is clearly confused with that machine, and I think Laurent, because he is so technically invested in the team and he loves racing so much, will be able to get stuck into that a little bit more with Yuki, and I think potentially in the coming races that might help.
That's a good point. He's an engineer by trade, is Laurent Mekies. And look, final thoughts on what's coming up for this racing team. I wanted to discuss Red Bull powertrains. It was very much Christian Horner's baby. He was the driving force behind Red Bull powertrains when it came into being, what was it now, more than 2 years ago. How much do you think Mekies is going to get involved in that? Do you think they're going to want to have a separate CEO for powertrains? I thought it was interesting at the weekend at Silverstone when Horner said it would be embarrassing for Mercedes if powertrains were better than them next year. I thought that was very open and honest, too honest probably, in the world of Formula One. But do you see him getting involved in powertrains as much as the racing team?
I think Laurent will go in and he'll want to get the racing team figured out first. So it might be that the wider Red Bull management will look to bolster the senior management around Laurent going forward. Given the fact that this has happened all quite quickly, I imagine there are probably still questions to be answered around that internally anyway. I don't think they've got this roadmap planned out exactly just yet. I think it's only been less than a couple of days since it's all happened. I think there will be things that they will have to work through. But it feels like this is maybe the first step of many steps that they're going to have to make to getting this team back towards the powerhouse that they were when they were winning championships just a couple of years ago. So I think they probably will have to consider that. It would be a big job for Laurent, I think, to run the racing team and have an oversight over the power unit facility, just because it is so green, and that obviously isn't his area of expertise. So I think that probably is something that Austrian senior management will have to discuss.
Because of all the success that Red Bull have had, and very recently, the way the wheels have fallen off the wagon, it's been pretty extreme. given there's been no major overhaul of regulations that we've seen in the past, to take over what is an established front-running team. And as you say, TC, without Max at the moment, they're tail enders. So to try and work out how to make the car drivable, then put the right drivers in, it's a really big undertaking. And then you've got the powertrains as well that's on the other side of it, which is on the horizon for next year, which is a major unknown for the whole team. And they've got such a good working relationship as well with Honda they've had for such a long time, and they've been really competitive with it. So that's just something else there's a risk for them and tough timing probably for Laurent.
いかがだったでしょうか。やはりコメンテーター陣にとってもメキースがレッドブル代表となったことは角田選手としてはいいことではないかという意見だったようです。セカンドマシンも戦えるようにしていくべきという話題も出ていましたが、果たして後半戦どうなっていくのでしょうか。角田選手の復活に期待して応援していきたいです。また今後も F1 に関しての情報をまとめた動画を制作していく予定です。継続するためにもぜひいいねやチャンネル登録をお願いいたします。ポッドキャストの内容について、また動画の感想などコメントいただけると嬉しいです。それでは。